Well, welcome back to Theo Faith, and we are in the Word this morning in Psalm 31. I've called this psalm Remember His Grace. And again, I've mentioned before, and I'll come back to this, but as we go through these first, what's called the Book of Psalms, the Psalms are organized into 5 books. We see in this first book, we can call it the Book of David, since so many of the Psalms are from David. Uh, says a Psalm of David. We see before us, kind of presented in these Psalms, God's ideal king. And that's not to say David was perfect. That's not to say that David himself was ideal, but the good things about David are presented to us as a example of what a good king is. And of course, this is pointing forward ultimately to the Lord Jesus. Now, Israel had a lot of kings. If you've read 1st and 2nd Samuel, 1st and 2nd Kings, 1st and 2nd Chronicles, you know, a lot of them were ungodly. In fact, most of them. And when we went through the historical books together, one of the things, the lessons that came out of those books was as the king, so the nation. And if the ungodly leaders end up leading a nation, then it leads the nation into ungodliness. And ultimately, of course, it led to exile for the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom. So in the Psalms, then, what's going on is God lays before Israel what a king who fears him should be like. David fears the Lord. Doesn't mean he's perfect, but it does mean that when God confronts him with sin, he responds. Now, like David and Solomon, for most of us, our challenge is not to learn more, but simply just to remember what we learned and live by it. And this must be common among God's people, because not just me and you, because we're told so often in the Bible to remember. So remembering is to bring something to mind. It's a verb, okay, to take action, as we see David in these first 8 verses, remembering. Knowing our tendency then to forget what the Lord has taught us, what the Lord has said. The Bible is filled with prompts and reminders. And that's what we see here. We see here in Psalm 31 an example for us, for the nation, primarily, as in the psalm, but also for the church, how David remembers, and he remembers in verses 1 through 8, God's grace. He says, "In you, O Lord, I have taken refuge. Never let me be ashamed. In your righteousness, deliver me. Incline your ear to me and rescue me quickly. Be to me a rock of strength, a stronghold to save me." And then David recalls here God's work with him in the past. You are my rock and my fortress. For your name's sake, you will lead me and guide me. You will pull me out of the net which they have secretly laid for me, for you are my strength. Into your hand I commit my spirit, for you have ransomed me, O Lord, God of truth. So what he's doing here in the rest of this first section is he's remembering what God has done for him in the past, and he's going to petition God to do it some more. Do it some more. He's confident because of the experience that he's had in the past. So for you and I, brothers and sisters, we need to think about what God has done, how he has rescued us from our sin. He has not only rescued us from the penalty of our sin through the death of Jesus on the cross, he's given us faith to believe. And then believing, he has brought us into this period of our sanctification, this present tense of our salvation, where we are being changed into the image of Christ. And God is supporting us the whole way. He's drawing us along the whole way. We need to remember that and keep it in mind, like David does here. And then in verses 9 to 11, we find David kind of remembering what God has done for him, now ask God to do more, Be gracious to me, O Lord, for I am in distress. My eye is wasted away from grief, my soul and my body also. Let me stop there for a minute. Just point out, encourage you guys how great it is that you are in the Word with me and through the Theo Faith Ministry, because more we see God's faithfulness in the life of David, in the life of Samuel, in the life of other numerous Old and New Testament characters, the more we can be certain that He's going to take care of us too, the more we can understand and see God's character. And again, as I said last time when we were looking at Psalm 30, how we need to persevere through trials and through training in order to get to that point of joy. So also as we live out the character of God through us, we have our own milestones in the past of faith that we can look on and say, well, God was faithful to me here. I know He's going to be, the same God is going to be faithful with me to today. I remember when I first moved to Dallas to go to seminary, I had 5 kids. We lived here in Colorado, a different place, Evergreen, Colorado. But we moved to Dallas, Texas, so I can go to Dallas Theological Seminary. We must have looked like the Clampetts. We loaded up our truck. We loaded up 5 kids. Moved to Dallas. At the time, I didn't have a job there, didn't know anybody, didn't have any prospects there, but God was so faithful to us the whole time, and I look back on that so often, not only myself, but my wife, and we remember God's faithfulness. We remember His character, that He will never leave us and forsake us, and we depend on that. Not only what His word says, but how we've experienced it in our own life. And that's what David's doing here in 9 through 13. He's saying, Lord, you've been gracious to me in the past. Be gracious to me now. I'm in distress. My eye is wasted away from grief, my soul and body also. Let me point out here another thing that we can learn is that sometimes sin in our life has a physical impact on us. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that every disease, every illness, every ache and pain is a result of personal sinfulness, but I am saying some are. I am saying that sometimes when we are mightily depressed, sometimes when we are letting ourselves go physically, sometimes when we begin to experience sickness and illness and disease because of our sin. And in some cases that needs to be recognized and repented of. Now, I don't know you personally. I'm kind of at a distance from you, but I pray that you are in a church where they have skilled pastors and elders that can counsel you and not just dismiss you off to a doctor, but look into your soul and see, is your eye wasting away because of grief? Your body wasting away because of unrepented sin? And again, don't take it to an extreme. I'm not saying all unrepentant sin is the source of disease. I am saying some is. As we go through this, then we get to verses 14 through the end of the through 24, through almost the end of the psalm. God, he is confidently proclaiming God's grace for the nation. So see the pattern here. David has remembered how God has graciously worked in his life personally. He asks God to continue to work graciously in his life as he faces opposition. And then at the end, he calls the nation. He proclaims God's grace, and he proclaims it to the nation. And this is our highlight verse today, our hearing verse. Be strong. Let your heart take courage, all you who hope in the Lord. This is a command. Be strong is a command, and it's directed by David to God's people. He is, after all, king. And he is telling them, take your stand, be strong in the Lord. This is what I've found it to be like. So great has he been to me in the past that as I face difficulties now, I can call on him, and you should do the same. To call on God's grace and be bold in the power of faith. This is a necessity in our life. It's not just for Israel, it's for us as well. It's a necessity to stand firm. I like 1 Corinthians 16, 13. I taught at a men's conference one time and taught from this verse. It says, be on the alert, stand firm in the faith, act like men, be strong, be strong. There's a certain quality of manliness that's in the Bible that we should not be ashamed of, shouldn't be pitied or people shame us for it. There's a certain strength and courage and power and steadfastness that has to do with biblical manhood, with manliness. And we need to be examples of that. We need to be strong in the Lord. He tells the Ephesians in Ephesians 6:10 the same thing. Be strong in the Lord and in the strength of his might. In other words, take courage. Let your heart take courage. Bold, grace-empowered strength makes us able to stand firm. And it helps us to stand firm in our church that's beleaguered by sin and to persist in a holy life and set right what has gone wrong. That's what we need. We need that kind of strength. We need that strength. Your church needs it. Your family needs it. If you are a man, your wife needs it. Second command is to take courage. Strength makes us able, but courage makes us move out beyond our fears. Notice I said move out beyond our fears. Fears don't go away. Courage makes you take action even though you are afraid. Courage makes you bold to take action even though you know that there's fear there. So rather, courage causes you to do right even when you're afraid to do right. It caused the paralytic in Matthew 9:2 to receive the forgiveness of sins. Courage caused Matthew to get out of the boat, or Peter, to get out of the boat despite the storm in Matthew 14. Strength enables us and gives us courage to move out. So strength with courage really is going to make David's people invincible, all you who hope in the Lord. And I don't think I exaggerate at all when I confess that for us, all of us are in need of strength and courage. And if we just remember what the Lord has done through his word, in his word, remember what the Lord has done in our own lives, our own personal life, then we have the reason to find strength and the courage to act on it. Like David, we have to remember and bring to mind how God gave strength to people like Abraham and Isaac and Jacob and Moses and Joshua and Rahab and Hannah and Deborah. Brothers and sisters, we need strength and courage to live the Christian life. So, how do we apply this? How do we respond to this? Well, let's remember what God has done for us. Let's set this particular day apart. I release these in the morning. I'm guessing a lot of you read them or listen to them in the morning. So let's go out for the rest of the day, conscious of the strength and the courage that is ours in the Lord. Let's be bold, okay? Bold in driving sin out of our lives. Bold in the example of godliness, bold in our witnessing, bold in speaking up when we need to speak up and say something's wrong. Don't be afraid. Don't be coward. Take courage. Be strong. God bless you, brothers and sisters.